Henry Cavill wasn't just an actor. He was, to those who knew him even peripherally, a man of unwavering principle. It wasn't just a carefully cultivated public image. It was woven into the fabric of his being. Stories of his genuine kindness, his respect for others, and his quiet acts of integrity were commonplace amongst those who worked with him, often whispered with a mixture of admiration and, perhaps, a touch of envy. He was, simply put, a decent man in a world that often seemed to reward the opposite. His dedication to fitness was well known, but he wasn't one for the glitz and glamour of celebrity gyms. He preferred a more down-to-earth establishment, a local gym called the Iron Forge, tucked away on a quiet street, far from the prying eyes of paparazzi. It was a no-frills place, filled with the clang of weights, the squeak of shoes on the floor, and the determined grunts of people pushing their limits. The Iron Forge was a sanctuary, a place where Henry could shed the Superman persona and simply be Henry, a man striving for physical and mental well-being. He valued the sense of community there, the shared struggle and quiet camaraderie that bound the regulars together. It was within these unpretentious walls that a situation would unfold, testing the very values he held dear. The rhythmic clang of iron usually soothed Henry, a meditative counterpoint to the exertion. But today, a discordant note disrupted the gym's familiar symphony. A group of 3 men, all built but with a swagger that spoke more of arrogance than hard work, had positioned themselves near a young black man who was diligently working on the squat rack. The young man, sweat beading on his brow, was pushing himself, clearly determined. At first, Henry dismissed the group as typical gym bros, full of loud talk and posturing. But as he focused on his own deadlifts, he couldn't help but notice their glances, their snickers. The comments started subtly, a muttered remark about showing off or a sarcastic observation about the young man's form. They weren't overtly offensive, but the intent was unmistakable. Their eyes, darting back and forth between the young man and each other, held a mean-spirited glint. Henry's jaw tightened. He recognized the subtle art of bullying, the way it could fester and escalate if left unchecked. He tried to ignore it, telling himself it wasn't his place to interfere, that the young man could handle himself. But the insidious nature of their mockery was starting to gnaw at him. He loaded more weight onto the barbell, trying to channel his unease into the lift. Each rep was a conscious effort to block out the rising tide of negativity emanating from the trio. But it was becoming increasingly difficult. Their comments grew bolder, their voices louder. No longer content with subtle jabs, they started making direct, albeit still veiled, remarks about the young man's physique, his clothes, even the way he wiped his brow. "Look at him, trying so hard," one sneered, loud enough for several people nearby to hear. "Probably thinks he's going to be Mr. Universe." Another chimed in, "Yeah, keep dreaming, buddy. Some people just don't have what it takes." Henry slammed the barbell back onto the rack, the reverberation echoing through the gym. He wiped the sweat from his own forehead, but his hands were shaking, not from exertion, but from suppressed anger. He glanced over at the young man, who was now visibly flustered, his movements becoming less fluid, his focus clearly broken. The bully's eyes met Henry's, and a smirk played on the lips of their apparent leader. It was a challenge, a test. Would he intervene, or would he remain silent, complicit in their petty cruelty? The internal debate raged within him. The weight of their taunts, and his own inaction, was becoming unbearable. The smirk solidified into a predatory grin, and the leader of the group leaned closer to his companions, lowering his voice but not enough to be unheard. "He's got the natural athleticism, all right," he drawled, the word dripping with sarcasm and a thinly veiled racial stereotype. "Just needs a little supervision to reach his full potential." The other 2 snickered, and a wave of palpable disgust washed over Henry. The casual racism, the blatant disrespect, the sheer audacity of it all snapped something within him. It wasn't just about gym etiquette or personal space anymore. It was about fundamental human decency. The young man visibly recoiled, his face tightening with a mixture of anger and humiliation. He stopped his set altogether, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Several other gym members had also heard the remark and were now glancing nervously in the direction of the group, their expressions a mixture of disapproval and apprehension. The atmosphere in the Iron Forge had shifted from one of shared effort to one of tense anticipation. The air crackled with unspoken tension. This was the line, the point of no return. Henry knew he could no longer stand idly by. The time for internal debate was over. With a deliberate motion, Henry stepped away from the weight rack, the metallic clink of the safety bars punctuating the silence. He walked towards the group, his movements betraying a controlled anger that radiated from him like heat. He wasn't shouting, wasn't posturing. His approach was measured, purposeful. He stopped a few feet from them, his imposing frame casting a shadow over their smirks. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice low but carrying clearly across the gym. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." He paused, letting the weight of his gaze settle on each of them in turn. "I find your comments not only disrespectful but also deeply offensive." The leader of the group, a man with a shaved head and bulging biceps, scoffed. "And what's it to you, pretty boy? Just stick to your weights." Henry's eyes narrowed, but his voice remained steady. "It's a matter of basic human decency. This gym is a place for people to improve themselves, to push their limits, not to be subjected to your petty and prejudiced remarks. What you said was unacceptable." He looked directly at the young black man, offering a brief, almost imperceptible nod of solidarity. Then he turned back to the group, his expression unwavering. "Apologize." The leader of the group, whose name, as it turned out, was Mark, let out a harsh laugh. "Apologize? To him? Get real, Superman. You think just because you're famous, you can waltz in here and tell us what to do?" He gestured dismissively. "Go back to your movie sets and leave us alone. This is none of your business." Another of the bullies, a skinny guy with a sneering face, added, "Yeah, Cavill. Trying to be a hero in real life now. Pathetic. Just looking for attention." They were attempting to belittle him, to reduce his intervention to a publicity stunt. Henry remained unmoved. "This isn't about fame or attention," he said, his voice still calm but with an undeniable edge. "This is about right and wrong, and what you're doing is wrong." He stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. He wasn't backing down, not for them, not for anyone. Their attempts to intimidate him, to dismiss him, were failing. He was there not as Henry Cavill, the actor, but as Henry, a man standing up against injustice. He was a force to be reckoned with, and they were beginning to realize it. The gym watched, holding its breath. Mark's bravado began to falter. Henry's unwavering gaze and calm demeanor were proving more formidable than he had anticipated. The other gym members, initially hesitant, started to subtly shift their allegiance. A few stopped their workouts altogether, openly watching the confrontation. Others offered small gestures of support, a nod of acknowledgement to Henry, a sympathetic glance towards the young black man. The skinny bully shuffled his feet, avoiding eye contact. Even Mark's usual swagger seemed diminished. The power dynamic was shifting. They had expected Henry to back down, to be embarrassed by their attempts to discredit him. Instead, he stood firm, a beacon of moral clarity in the suddenly charged atmosphere. A woman in her 50s, a regular at the gym known for her impressive deadlifts, cleared her throat loudly and said, "He's right. You know, this kind of behavior isn't welcome here." Her words, though simple, carried the weight of the community's unspoken agreement. A murmur of assent rippled through the room. The bullies were no longer just facing Henry. They were facing the collective disapproval of the Iron Forge. The walls were closing in. The weight of the room's disapproval was palpable. Mark, sensing the tide had turned decisively against him, cleared his throat and mumbled, all right, no need to get all worked up. It was just a joke. We didn't mean anything by it." His voice lacked conviction, the apology sounding hollow and insincere. The skinny bully echoed, "Yeah, just messing around. We were just trying to motivate him, you know? Some people respond to a little tough love." He offered a weak, nervous smile that didn't reach his eyes. Their excuses were flimsy, transparent attempts to salvage the situation. They were backtracking, desperate to escape the consequences of their actions. Henry wasn't buying it. He saw the insincerity in their eyes, the lack of genuine remorse. He knew they were only apologizing because they felt cornered, not because they understood the harm they had caused. "A joke," Henry repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. "Racial stereotypes and blatant disrespect are not jokes. They are hurtful and damaging. And tough love doesn't involve belittling someone for their race or their efforts." He kept his gaze fixed on Mark, waiting for a real apology, one that acknowledged the wrong they had committed. The silence stretched, thick with tension. Mark finally relented, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Look, all right, we're sorry," he mumbled, the words barely audible. "We didn't mean to cause any trouble." Henry maintained his unwavering stare. "It's not about causing trouble," he said, his voice firm. "It's about respect. It's about recognizing the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of their race, their background, or their abilities." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "This gym, like any community, thrives on mutual respect and support. Your behavior undermines that, and it's not acceptable." He continued, his voice gaining strength. "And it's not just here. This kind of thinking, this kind of prejudice has no place in our society. We all have a responsibility to stand up against it, to challenge it whenever we see it." He looked around at the other gym members, his gaze encompassing the entire room. "Because silence is complicity, and we can't afford to be silent." He turned back to Mark and his companions, his expression resolute. "I hope you'll take some time to reflect on your actions and understand the impact they have on others. And I hope you'll do better in the future." He didn't offer them an easy out, a quick absolution. He wanted them to understand the gravity of their actions. Turning his attention away from the chastened bullies, Henry walked towards the young black man, who was still standing by the squat rack, his posture tense, his expression a mixture of relief and lingering humiliation. Henry extended his hand. "I'm Henry," he said, offering a warm, genuine smile. The young man hesitated for a moment, then shook Henry's hand. "David," he replied, his voice a little shaky. "David," Henry repeated. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry you had to experience that. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially not here." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Don't let them discourage you. You were working hard, and you have every right to be here just like everyone else." He looked directly into David's eyes, conveying sincerity and support. "If they bother you again, please don't hesitate to speak up, or to let someone at the front desk know. This gym is supposed to be a safe and supportive environment, and we need to make sure it stays that way." He wanted to ensure David felt empowered, not just in that moment but going forward. He wanted to restore David's sense of belonging and confidence, to erase the lingering sting of the bully's words. He finished, "Keep up the good work, David. I'm sure you'll reach your goals." Mark and his companions, their heads hung low, gathered their belongings in awkward silence. The bravado they had displayed earlier had completely evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of shame and discomfort. They avoided eye contact with everyone in the gym as they made their way towards the exit, their departure unceremonious and swift. As the door swung shut behind them, a collective sigh seemed to ripple through the iron forge. The tense atmosphere that had gripped the gym began to dissipate, replaced by a feeling of shared relief and renewed camaraderie. A sense of solidarity settled over the room, a silent acknowledgement of the shared values that bound them together. David, visibly relieved, returned to his workout, his movements now fluid and confident. The weight he lifted seemed lighter, the burden of the bully's words lifted from his shoulders. The clang of iron resonated with a new sense of purpose, a renewed commitment to strength and resilience. The gym had been cleansed, the negativity purged. The Iron Forge was once again a sanctuary, a place where everyone could strive for their goals without fear of prejudice or harassment. As Henry resumed his own workout, a steady stream of gym members approached him, offering words of gratitude and support. The woman who had spoken out earlier, the one known for her deadlifts, approached him first. "Thank you, Henry," she said, extending her hand. "That took guts. We all appreciate you standing up for what's right." Others followed suit, offering similar sentiments. "We've had problems with those guys before," one man confided. "They're always making trouble. It's good to see someone finally put them in their place." "You handled that perfectly," another woman said. "It's important to show people that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated." Their words reinforced the positive impact of his intervention, validating his decision to speak out. It wasn't just about silencing the bullies. It was about creating a safer, more inclusive environment for everyone. He realized that his actions had resonated deeply with the community, reaffirming their shared values and strengthening their bond. He wasn't just an actor. He was a member of their community, and they appreciated him for standing up for what they believed in. It was a humbling and gratifying experience. Later that evening, as Henry sat at home, the events of the day replayed in his mind. He thought about David, the young man who had been subjected to such unwarranted cruelty. He hoped his words had made a difference, that David wouldn't let the incident deter him from pursuing his goals. He also reflected on his own initial hesitation. He had considered staying silent, telling himself it wasn't his place to interfere. But he realized that silence, in the face of injustice, is a form of complicity. Even seemingly small acts of prejudice, if left unchecked, can fester and grow, poisoning the atmosphere and eroding the fabric of society. He understood that standing up against injustice, even in seemingly insignificant situations, is crucial. It's about creating a world where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued. It's about challenging the status quo and refusing to accept prejudice as normal. He knew he couldn't solve all the world's problems, but he could make a difference in his own small way, by standing up for what he believed in, by speaking out against injustice whenever he encountered it. The experience reaffirmed his commitment to using his platform, however small, to promote inclusivity and respect. The incident at the Iron Forge didn't just fade away. It served as a catalyst for lasting change. The gym's management, spurred by the events and the subsequent outpouring of support for Henry's actions, took concrete steps to address the issue of bullying and discrimination. They implemented a clear and comprehensive anti-harassment policy, outlining unacceptable behaviors and providing a clear reporting process. They also organized workshops for staff and members on topics such as diversity, inclusion, and bystander intervention. The aim was to create a culture of zero tolerance for any form of prejudice or discrimination. The gym members themselves became more vigilant, actively watching out for and challenging any instances of bullying or disrespectful behavior. They created a supportive and inclusive environment where everyone felt safe and welcome. The Iron Forge transformed from just a place to work out into a true community, bound together by shared values of respect, equality, and mutual support. David, in particular, became a vocal advocate for inclusivity, sharing his experience and encouraging others to stand up against injustice. The Iron Forge, once just a local gym, became a model for other establishments, demonstrating the power of community action in creating a more just and equitable world. The story of Henry Cavill at the Iron Forge serves as a powerful reminder that even seemingly ordinary individuals can make an extraordinary difference. It underscores the significance of individual action in fostering a more inclusive and respectful society, demonstrating that courage and integrity, not fame or fortune, are the true catalysts for positive change. Henry's character, already admired by many, was further solidified by his actions that day. He wasn't just playing a hero on screen, he was embodying one in real life. His willingness to stand up against injustice, to challenge prejudice, and to offer support to someone in need spoke volumes about his values and his commitment to creating a better world. and it reinforces the notion that celebrities, often placed on pedestals and viewed as detached from everyday realities, can indeed use their platform to advocate for positive change. Henry didn't need to organize a massive campaign or issue a grand statement. He simply acted with decency and compassion in a moment of need. His actions, though seemingly small, had a profound impact, transforming a gym and inspiring a community. The story of Henry Cavill at the Iron Forge is a testament to the power of individual action and the enduring importance of standing up for what is right.